Welcome, and thank you for being here tonight. Find your most comfortable position now, and let your body settle into the warmth and softness that surrounds you. Let your shoulders drop a little, let your hands rest, let the weight of the day begin, slowly and gently, to leave you. Tonight, as you drift quietly toward sleep, you will come to understand something beautiful about the way the mind can rest, drawn from one of the oldest and gentlest traditions of wisdom that human beings have ever known. You don't need to concentrate on any of it. Simply let the words arrive, soft and unhurried, like a slow tide, and let the understanding come on its own, the way warmth spreads through the hands when you hold a cup of something warm in the dark. And so, let your eyes close now, or let them rest wherever they fall, and let your breathing become just a little slower, a little easier, a little more your own. There is nowhere to be tonight. There is nothing to do. There is only this soft darkness, and this quiet voice, and the slow, gentle drift of your own breathing, in and out, soft and even, carrying you somewhere restful and still. Somewhere, a very long time ago, in a warm and quiet land, a man sat beneath a large tree, and simply allowed himself to be still. He was not trying to solve anything. He was not holding on to anything. He was not turning away from anything either. He was simply sitting, in the way that a stone rests at the bottom of a clear stream, settled, untroubled, letting the water move around it and above it without being carried away. And from that long, quiet sitting, something opened in him. Not something loud, not something bright or sharp or dramatic, something soft, something that had perhaps always been there, underneath the noise and the movement, and the constant small urgencies that fill an ordinary day. Something that felt, more than anything else, like a very deep rest. That man is known across the world by many names, but the one most often used is simply the Buddha, which means, in its oldest and warmest translation, the one who is awake. And yet, in a way that feels gently ironic on a night like this one, much of what he taught has to do with the very opposite of the grasping, effortful wakefulness we usually mean when we use that word. What he pointed toward, again and again, across long, unhurried conversations in shaded gardens and on quiet hillsides, was a kind of peace that arises not from doing, but from letting go. Let your body soften a little more into the bed now, if that feels right. Let the mattress and the pillows receive your weight, fully and without resistance. You don't have to hold yourself up anymore. The heart of what the Buddha offered to the world is not complicated, even though people have spent many quiet centuries exploring its depths. At its very center is one simple and gentle observation. That suffering, in its many forms, from great sorrow down to the faintest background hum of unease, arises not from the world itself, but from the way we hold the world. From the way the mind reaches out and clings to things it wants to keep, or pushes away from things it doesn't want to feel, or wanders restlessly from one thought to the next, looking for something solid, something permanent, something that will finally make things feel still and complete and safe. And the beautiful thing he noticed, sitting quietly under that tree, is that when the reaching and the pushing and the restless wandering slow down, even just a little, even just for a breath or two, something underneath them can be felt, something that was always there. A quiet, a space, a stillness that does not come and go, the way that moods and thoughts and feelings come and go. A stillness that is simply there, underneath everything, the way the deep water at the bottom of a lake is always still, no matter how the wind moves the surface. Let your breath move slowly now, in its own natural rhythm. There is no need to control it or to change it. Simply notice it, the way you might notice the slow movement of a curtain in a gentle breeze. In and out, soft and slow, the body knowing what to do, all on its own. One of the loveliest images in the whole of this ancient tradition is the image of the mind as a sky. Not a dramatic, stormy sky, full of movement and color and urgency. Just an open, vast, and quietly luminous sky. The kind you might see just before sleep, when the light has faded and the blue has deepened, and there is a sense of infinite gentleness overhead. The thoughts and feelings that pass through the mind during an ordinary day are like clouds in that sky. Some of them are large and slow-moving, heavy and gray. Some of them are light and white and hardly noticeable. Some of them gather in clusters and make the world seem dimmer for a while. And then they pass. They always pass. Even the ones that feel as though they will never move, the ones that seem to fill the whole sky and make it impossible to see anything else. Even those, eventually, drift on. But the sky itself does not change. The sky does not become a cloud. The sky simply holds whatever is there, without clinging to the bright ones or pushing away the dark ones, without becoming anxious about how full it is or how long the clouds have been passing. The sky just is, open, patient, still. And in this tradition, this is not just a beautiful image. It is a pointer towards something real, something that can actually be felt, in the body, in the breath, in the soft space behind the eyes, when the mind is very quiet and the night is very still. The capacity to be like the sky, to hold everything gently, to be moved by nothing, the way the depths of the ocean are moved by nothing, even when the surface is full of waves. Let your jaw soften now, just a little, and your hands, let them rest where they are, open and easy. There is a word in the old language of these teachings that is said so often, and felt so deeply, that it has passed from that ancient tongue into almost every language in the world. The word is peace, though the original word carries something slightly richer than that, something that combines stillness and coolness, and a kind of rest so complete that it feels not like the absence of something, but like the presence of something, the presence of a quiet that is its own reward, not emptiness, but fullness, the fullness of a room that is warm and dim and perfectly safe, where there is no need to think about what comes next, because what is here, now, in this breath, in this moment, is already exactly enough. That feeling, that particular quality of quiet, is not something that has to be earned or achieved or worked toward. It is something that is already here, underneath the thinking, underneath the planning, underneath the small, constant hum of the day mind that usually fills the space. It is what is left when those things slow down and go quiet. And on a night like this one, when the body is soft in the bed, and the room is dark, and the voice is low, and the breath is slow, that quiet is perhaps closer than it usually is. Perhaps it is very close indeed. Let it be close. There is nothing to do with it, no need to examine it or name it or hold it carefully. Simply let it be near, the way you let warmth be near on a cold evening, without thinking about warmth or trying to understand it. It is just there, soft and real, surrounding you gently, like water that is exactly the right temperature. The Buddha spoke often about the nature of the present moment, not in a demanding way, not in a way that required enormous concentration or effort, more in the way that someone might quietly draw your attention to something you had forgotten was there. A small sound in the room, the sensation of the blanket against the skin, the simple fact of breathing, happening all on its own, without any help from you at all. The present moment, in these teachings, is the only place where peace is actually available. Not in the memory of yesterday, where the mind replays and revisits, and sometimes holds old things a little too tightly. Not in the imagination of tomorrow, where the mind reaches forward and builds and plans and sometimes worries, without meaning to. Only here, only now, only in this breath, only in the soft weight of the body settling into the bed, only in this warm darkness, this quiet voice, this slow and easy rhythm of breathing in and breathing out. And the beautiful thing, the thing that can be felt rather than understood, is that the present moment is never difficult. It is always just this, just what is here, just the warmth, the softness, the slow breath, the quiet. Whatever the mind made of the day, whatever the day asked of you, that is over now. It lives in the past, which is no longer here. And what is here is simply and gently this: the bed, the breath, the dark, the stillness. You might feel, as you lie here, the gentle urge of the mind to move, to drift toward a thought, a memory, something that was left unresolved in the day, something that will need attending to at some point. Some small worry, wearing the disguise of urgency. This is completely natural. This is simply the mind doing what it has practiced doing for a very long time, moving, reaching, looking, checking, And in the spirit of these ancient and gentle teachings, there is no need to fight that movement, no need to push the thoughts away or scold the mind for wandering. The instruction, if it can even be called that, is softer and kinder than that. Simply notice. Simply feel that the mind has moved, the way you might notice that you've shifted your weight in the bed, without any drama attached to the noticing. And then, as gently as a hand resting on a shoulder, bring the attention back to the breath, back to the body, back to the warmth of the bed, back to this moment, which is always open, always here, always asking nothing of you. This returning, over and over, soft and unjudging and unhurried, is, in its quiet way, the whole practice. Not a special state that has to be achieved, not a blankness that has to be forced. Just this, just noticing, just returning, just breathing. The way a boat on a slow river drifts a little in the current, and then is gently guided back toward the center, again and again, without urgency, without force, the river itself moving slowly, and the boat resting on the river, and the evening quiet on both sides. Every muscle can soften a little more. Every breath can be a little slower. Every moment can be a little quieter than the one before. In the tradition that grows from that original long sitting beneath the tree, there is much tender attention paid to the body. Not in a harsh or demanding way, not in a way that sets high standards or measures or goals, simply an acknowledgement, warm and clear, that the body is not separate from the mind's peace, that when the shoulders drop, the mind drops too, that when the jaw unclenches, something in the thoughts unclenches with it, that when the breath becomes slow and deep and natural, the whole interior world responds, softening at its edges, losing its urgency, settling into something quieter. This is why so much of this tradition begins with the body, not with grand ideas, not with difficult concepts, just the body, the breath moving in and out, the weight of the limbs, the sensation of stillness, which is not the absence of sensation, but a very particular, very quiet kind of presence. The body, breathing in the dark, alive and warm and completely at rest. And there is a teaching that has been passed gently from one quiet voice to another across many long centuries, which says simply this, that the body, breathing, in this moment, is already complete, already whole, already enough, not needing to be different, not needing to achieve anything, not waiting for something else to happen before it is allowed to rest. It is resting. It is here. And here is where peace lives. Somewhere, very far away, there might be the sound of the world continuing, a distant sound, a soft sound, the world going on in its ordinary way, with all its small movements and murmurs, completely unrelated to this warm and quiet room. And that is fine. The world can continue out there, busy and bright, while here, in this dark and gentle space, the body grows heavier, and the breath grows slower, and the mind grows softer, and the thoughts begin to thin and drift apart like mist in the early morning, when the sun is still low, and everything is still, and the air has not yet woken up. The mind, in these teachings, is spoken of with great tenderness, not as a problem to be fixed, not as a source of difficulty, not as something wild that must be tamed, but as something naturally clear and naturally calm, the way a pond is naturally clear when nothing disturbs it. The surface might be ruffled by wind, might carry reflections that are rippled and distorted, might seem, from a distance, murky or full of movement, but the water itself, the actual substance of it, is clear. And when the wind stills and the surface settles, the clarity is simply there again. It never went anywhere. It was always there, under the movement. Your mind is like that pond tonight. The day may have sent a great deal of wind across its surface. The thoughts and feelings and small urgencies of an ordinary day, all of them moving through, disturbing the surface, making things seem busier and louder than the deep water ever actually is. And now the wind is very still. The room is quiet. The body is heavy. The breath is slow. And the surface of the mind, very gradually, is settling, becoming smoother, becoming quieter, the reflections growing less distorted, the thoughts growing slower and less insistent, the whole interior world beginning, slowly, to return to its natural state, which is not noise, which is not hurry, which is this quiet, this warmth, this gentle, unhurried drift toward sleep. Let a slow breath leave the body now. Let it go completely, all the way to the end, unhurried, until the lungs are soft and empty, and then let the next breath arrive on its own, the way the tide arrives, without being called, simply because it is time, in and out, slow and even, the body breathing in the dark, and the mind growing softer with every breath, and the night holding everything gently, the way a large, quiet room holds the people inside it, without effort, without asking anything, simply surrounding them with its stillness and its dark and its warmth. The Buddha, in those long and gentle conversations beneath the trees and in the quiet gardens and on the warm hillsides of that ancient land, returned again and again to one quality above all others, a quality that is difficult to name precisely because it has a particular kind of warmth that ordinary words don't quite carry. But the closest translation is something like compassion, or perhaps tender kindness, or perhaps simply the willingness to hold whatever is there, including oneself, with a kind of open and unhurried warmth, without judgment, without the urge to fix or change or improve. There is a way of resting in the dark that carries a little of that quality, not demanding anything of the night, not demanding anything of the mind, not insisting that sleep arrive on schedule, or that the thoughts stop moving, or that the body feel any particular way. Simply allowing, simply being warm toward whatever is here, the tiredness, if it is here, the quiet, if it is here, the slow breathing, which is always here, faithful and simple and real, allowing it all, gently and without preference, the way the sky allows whatever clouds are passing. And in that allowing, something tends to happen, something gentle and unhurried, something that cannot be forced, but arrives of its own accord when the conditions are right. The body grows heavier, the breath grows slower, the thoughts grow lighter and more distant, like sounds heard through a wall, present, but no longer demanding attention. And somewhere in that growing lightness and distance, the boundary between waking and sleeping begins to soften, and the mind begins to drift toward that warm and quiet country that is neither fully here nor fully gone, but somewhere in between, somewhere soft and dim and borderless, where the thoughts dissolve before they finish forming, and the breath becomes the whole world. That country is very close tonight. You can feel it perhaps at the edges of your awareness, a gentle heaviness in the eyes, a loosening of the thoughts, a warmth that is spreading slowly from the center of the body outward. Let it come. There is nothing to do to help it. Simply rest. Simply breathe. Simply allow the night to do what the night does, quietly and without effort, drawing everything gently downward, into rest, into stillness, into the deep and simple peace that is always waiting underneath the day. Let the shoulders settle a little more. Let the hands be heavy where they rest. Let the face be soft, the brow smooth, the jaw loose and easy. Every part of the body, from the top of the head down through the neck and the shoulders and the chest and the arms to the very tips of the fingers, and down through the belly and the hips and the long, warm heaviness of the legs to the very tips of the toes. Every part allowed to rest now, fully and without reservation, supported by the softness beneath it, held by the warmth around it, surrounded by the quiet dark. The ancient teachings speak of layers, layers of the self, like the layers of a deep and quiet building, each one lower and softer than the one above. The outermost layer is the body, warm and heavy now, and growing still. Below that, the breath, moving slowly in the dark like a slow tide, reliable and soft. Below that, the thinking mind, which is growing quieter now, its voices becoming softer and less distinct, like a conversation heard from a distance, the words no longer clear, just the gentle murmur of it, fading. Below that, something deeper still, quieter, more still, something that is not quite thought and not quite feeling, but more like a vast and gentle openness, the way a darkened room feels open when there is nothing in it but the dark itself, and the quiet, and the faint warmth that still holds the memory of the day. That deepest layer is always there. It does not come and go. It is not affected by the noise of the day, or the busyness of the mind, or the weight of whatever the hours contained. It is simply there, underneath everything, steady and soft and completely at rest, the way the ground is always there beneath the surface of the earth, solid and quiet, and utterly untroubled by whatever grows and moves and changes above it. And tonight, as the body grows heavy, and the breath grows slow, and the thoughts grow thin and drift apart, you are moving toward that deepest layer, not striving toward it, not trying, simply descending, the way a stone descends through still water, slowly and without effort, following its own gentle weight downward through the layers, through the thinking and the feeling and the breathing, through all the soft and quiet strata of the self, toward that deep and untroubled stillness at the center of everything. The water around the stone is perfectly clear. The descent is perfectly slow. There is no urgency to it, no sound, just the gentle movement downward, the gradual fading of the light above, the growing quiet, the growing dark, the growing peace. And the stone does not resist. It simply falls, slowly, softly, trusting the water to receive it, trusting the depth to hold it, trusting the stillness that is waiting at the bottom to be exactly what it has always been, quiet, complete, at rest. Let yourself be like that stone tonight. Let yourself fall, slowly and without resistance, through the quiet layers of the self, through the thinking and the breathing and the warmth and the dark, downward and inward, toward the place that is always still, always waiting, always there, always there. There is a teaching that has been passed down through many quiet centuries, not written first, but spoken, whispered from one gentle mind to another, in still rooms and beneath open skies, beside slow rivers, and in the hushed spaces of early morning, before the world began its noise. The teaching says simply that the nature of the mind, the very deepest nature, beneath all the layering and the movement, and the ceaseless soft turning of thought upon thought, is like the sky. Not like a particular sky, not the sky of any one day or season, but the sky as a thing in itself, as a quality, as an openness that has no edges and no floor, that holds everything and is troubled by nothing, that was never born and will never end, that simply is, and has always been, and will always be, long after every cloud that ever moved through it has dissolved. The clouds are the thoughts. The weather is the emotion. The wind is the restlessness and the reaching, and the wanting, and the fearing, all of it passing through the sky, all of it temporary, all of it belonging to the sky, no more than a sound belongs to the silence that holds it. The silence is not changed by the sound. The sky is not changed by the cloud, and the deepest part of you is not changed by the thinking, the feeling, the remembering, the hoping, the small daily turbulences of a human life moving through time. That deepest part is resting now. You do not have to find it. You do not have to reach for it, or prepare yourself for it, or become somehow worthy of it. It is simply where you already are, underneath the movement, underneath the softness of this present moment, steady and clear and quietly radiant, the way the sky is always clear above whatever weather is moving through the lower air. Let that thought settle now, without needing to hold it. Let it drift down through you like a warm feather falling through still air, turning gently, finding its own unhurried way to the bottom of things. There is another teaching, one that comes from a slightly different angle, but arrives at the same soft place. It speaks of impermanence, but not in a way that is meant to trouble or sadden. It speaks of impermanence, the way you might speak of a river, noting not the loss of the water, but the beauty of the movement, the way the surface shifts and shimmers, and carries the light, the way it is never the same from one moment to the next, and yet the river remains. The river continues. The river is somehow more itself, because of its constant gentle changing. Every thought that arose today is gone now, or nearly gone. Every small worry that tightened the chest, every flicker of impatience or longing or tiredness, every moment of brightness and every moment of shadow, all of it moving on, all of it passing the way everything passes, not violently, not dramatically, but softly, the way the afternoon passes into evening without announcing itself, without a seam. And there is something restful in that, something that the body already knows, even when the mind forgets. The body knows that everything passes. The body has been through so many days, so many waves of feeling and fatigue and recovery, and it has learned, the way old rivers learn the landscape, how to move through without holding on, how to let the water find its own way forward, and downward, and eventually still. Rest with that knowing now. Let the body remember what it already knows, that everything softens, that everything settles, that the day, however it was, has done what it came to do, and now it is finished, and now the night has taken over, quietly and without fuss, the way a good and trusted presence takes over when you finally allow it in. There is a word in the old languages of these teachings, a word for the quality of mind that is most naturally peaceful. It is sometimes translated as spaciousness, other times as openness, sometimes simply as clarity. But all of those translations are pointing at the same quality, the quality of a mind that is not gripping, not refusing, not bracing itself against anything, but simply open, the way a hand is open when it is finally released from holding, the way a room is open when all the windows are soft with evening light, and there is nowhere to be, and nothing to do, and the air inside is warm and still. That quality is available right now, not as something to be achieved or produced, not as the result of any effort, but simply as what remains when the effort is gently set aside, like the surface of water when the wind drops, like the silence that is always underneath the sound, which does not arrive when the sound ends but simply becomes audible, reveals itself, has always been there waiting to be noticed. The breath is slower now, moving in and out with very little insistence, barely a sound, a gentle rhythm that the body maintains all on its own, without any supervision or assistance from the thinking mind. You do not have to breathe. The breathing is simply happening, as it has always happened, as it will continue to happen, long after the thinking mind has grown quiet and the last conscious thought has dissolved into the warm dark. Trust that. Trust the body to go on doing what the body does, quietly and reliably, in the dark, while the mind lets go. There is nothing to oversee. There is nothing to manage. Everything that needs to continue will continue, softly and without your attention. The heart will beat. The breath will move. The warmth will stay, and you can release your hold on all of it, every last thread of vigilance and oversight, and simply descend. The ancient image for this releasing is the image of a flower closing at nightfall, not closing in fear or resistance, not shutting itself against something, but simply following its own nature, the same nature that opens it in the light of morning, the same wholeness expressing itself now in a different direction, inward and downward and quiet, gathering itself softly into its own center, becoming still. You are like that flower tonight. Whatever you opened toward during the day, whatever light you reached for, whatever small exertions and extensions and offerings the hours asked of you, all of it was real, all of it was good, and now the same deep nature that moved you through the day is moving you gently in a different direction, not away from anything, but toward something, toward the rest that is also part of the wholeness, toward the quiet that is the other half of every sound, toward the stillness that is the ground of all movement. Let the petals close. Let the center of the self grow soft and inward and dim. Let the thinking grow so quiet that it becomes indistinguishable from not thinking, the way a very soft sound becomes indistinguishable from silence, not gone exactly, but no longer separate from the surrounding peace. There is a kind of understanding that only comes in these borderland hours, in the soft dissolving space between the day mind and the sleeping mind, where the usual structures of thought grow permeable and warm. Not sharp understanding, not the kind that arrives with a sudden brightness or insists on being named and held and carried back into the light. A gentler kind, a kind that seeps rather than strikes, the kind that leaves no particular memory, but changes something quietly, the way water changes stone over many years without either the water or the stone being aware of the changing. Just the slow and patient work of one soft thing moving against another until the edges round and the whole shape becomes something smoother and more settled than it was. Perhaps that is the best kind of understanding, the kind that cannot be explained afterward because it was never fully a thought in the first place, more of a softening, more of a settling into rightness, like a key finding its way into a lock in the dark, not seen but felt, a small and quiet click of alignment, and then the door simply opens. There are no doors to open tonight. There is nowhere to arrive. The teachings say this too, in their gentle way, that the deepest peace is not a destination. It is not somewhere you have not yet been. It is not waiting for you at the end of some long and effortful journey. It is here, in this breath, in this warmth, in this moment of lying still in the dark, with the weight of the day finally released, and the weight of tomorrow not yet gathered. Right here, in the very ordinariness of this, the familiar weight of the body, the familiar rhythm of the breath, the familiar quiet of a room at night, there is something that has never left and never will, something steady and faintly luminous and deeply, deeply at rest. Let the thoughts drift now without following them. They may still be moving somewhere at the edges, soft shapes in the peripheral dark, forming and dissolving, half words and half images, the soft residue of the day's dreaming. Let them move, let them pass. You do not need to look at them or understand them or determine what they mean. They are simply the last leaves, settling after a long and gentle wind, finding their way down through the still air to the still ground, coming to rest. And the ground is very close now. The ground of the self, the deep, untroubled, quietly radiant ground that has no name in ordinary language, because ordinary language was built for the surface, for the moving, and the naming, and the distinguishing, not for this, not for the place below all of that, where everything is simply what it is, where there is no separation between the resting and the rested, between the knowing and the known, between the soft dark of the room and the soft dark behind the eyes. The breath is very slow, a long, easy inhalation, barely a thought, barely an action, more like a gentle swelling, the way a quiet sea swells beneath a moonless sky. No drama to it, no intention, just the slow and faithful movement of something alive and unhurried and completely at home in itself. And then the exhalation, softer still, a slow releasing, a long and quiet letting go that seems to go on a little longer than expected, a little deeper, a little more complete, as if the body has decided to give back to the night everything it borrowed from the day. In between the breaths, a small and perfect stillness. Nothing happening, no thought forming, no sound attending, just a pause, warm and complete, the way a held note in a piece of quiet music is not an absence but a presence, not empty but full, full of everything that the music has been building toward, all of it gathered and held in that single still moment before the next breath comes. You can rest in that pause. You can let the pause be large. The next breath will come when it comes, reliably, and without your help, and until then, there is only the stillness, only the warm and borderless quiet, only the sense of being held in something much larger and much softer than the thinking mind can name. The teachings speak of this largeness, gently, without insisting. They say it has many names and no name. They say it has been called the unborn because it was never created. They say it has been called the undying because it has never ended. They say it is closer than breathing and quieter than silence and more intimate than the most intimate thing you have ever felt. And they say that no effort is needed to arrive at it, only the willingness to stop arriving, only the willingness to be already here, already home, already held. And so the words grow fewer now. The spaces between them grow wider. The voice that has been guiding you through this soft country grows quieter and less distinct, more like a presence than a sound, more like warmth than words, blending gently into the surrounding dark, the way a dim light blends into evening, not extinguished, just no longer separate from everything around it. There is a heaviness behind the eyes now, a beautiful and irresistible heaviness, the kind that cannot be argued with and does not need to be, the kind that is simply the body's own deep wisdom, expressing itself in the most natural and trustworthy way, pulling you inward and downward, toward the place that the teachings have only ever been pointing at, never quite able to name, because names are for the surface, and this is for the depth, for the soft and formless depth, where the self finally grows too quiet to be called a self, and simply rests in the vast and luminous dark, like a stone come to rest at last, at the bottom of still water, still and settled and completely at home. At home in a way that the waking mind, with all its reaching and its restlessness, its plans and its preferences, its gentle, anxious turning toward the next thing and the next, could never quite achieve through effort alone. Not because the waking mind is wrong in any way, not because its movements are unwelcome, but simply because home is not a place the mind arrives at by moving. Home is what remains when the moving grows still. And here, now, in this soft and deepening quiet, the moving has grown very still indeed. There is a teaching, offered gently, without urgency, that speaks of a lamp in a windowless room. Not a bright lamp, not one that dazzles or demands attention, but a small and steady lamp, the kind that has been burning so quietly and for so long that you have grown accustomed to its light and ceased to notice it as light at all, mistaking it for simply the nature of the room itself. And perhaps that is exactly right. Perhaps the light and the room have been one thing all along. Perhaps awareness itself is something like this. Not a beam directed outward, not a searchlight sweeping through the dark, but something softer and more diffuse, something that does not illuminate objects so much as it quietly pervades everything it touches, the way warmth pervades a room long after the fire has settled into embers, not concentrated in any single place, not arriving from any single direction, just present, just gently and evenly and completely present. The embers of the day are settling now, all the bright and busy flames that filled the hours, all the quick warm flares of thought and word and movement. They are settling, the way a fire settles when it is no longer fed, not dying exactly, just finding its slower and more ancient nature, the deep glow beneath the flame, the part that has always been there beneath the brightness and the urgency, patient and warm and quietly enduring. Let the body be like those embers now, warm and slow and no longer reaching, heavy in the way that warmth makes things heavy, not oppressively, not uncomfortably, but with a kind of pleased and profound surrender, the way a stone that has been warmed all day by summer sun seems, in the evening, to have taken that warmth inside itself and settled into the earth, with a kind of grateful weight, content to be warm, content to be still, content to be exactly where it is. The shoulders, if they are still holding anything, can let it go now, not because they are instructed to, but simply because there is nothing left to hold. The day has been held long enough. The thoughts have been carried faithfully and well. And now the carrying can pause, gently, without ceremony, the way a traveler sets down a bag at the end of a long day's walking, not with drama, not with announcement, but simply with the quiet recognition that the walking is done, and the bag can rest, and the hands can be empty for a while. Empty hands. There is something the teachings find very gentle and very beautiful in the image of empty hands. Not hands that have lost something, not hands that are lacking, but hands that are simply open, palms turned softly upward in the dark, receiving nothing in particular, needing nothing in particular, simply open the way a valley is open, the way the sky is open, not emptied of something, but spacious in themselves, spacious by nature, holding the whole of the night inside their quiet openness without any effort at all. This spaciousness, the tradition says, is not something that can be manufactured. You cannot build it the way you build a shelter, with effort and intention and carefully chosen materials. You can only notice it. You can only allow the noticing to happen, the way you allow the eyes to adjust in a dark room, not forcing them, not straining, just letting the darkness gradually reveal what was always present within it, the soft shapes, the gradual luminosity, the gentle revelation that dark is not as absolute as it first seemed, that there is always a little light somewhere, always a little warmth, always something that the darkness itself is resting in, and which is not, itself, entirely dark. The mind that is drifting toward sleep knows this intuitively. The dreaming mind, hovering at the threshold, has already begun to release its hold on the sharp and the precise, the definite and the separate. Things are beginning to blend at the edges now. The boundary between the body and the bed has grown soft and uncertain. The boundary between the sound of the voice and the sound of the breathing and the sound of the night itself has grown soft and uncertain. Even the boundary between the thought that is forming and the silence in which it forms has grown soft, so gently indistinct, that the thought and the silence seem almost to be made of the same material, the same quiet substance, moving very slowly through the same warm and dimensionless dark. This is not confusion. This is the opposite of confusion. This is the mind releasing its habitual need to divide and distinguish and hold apart, and discovering, in that release, something that is perhaps more accurate than all its careful distinctions, something that the waking mind, with its love of categories and its need for borders, has always slightly obscured by the very effort of its knowing. The truth, or something very close to the truth, or the quiet place from which all truths arise, is not divided. It does not have edges. It does not know the difference between inside and outside, between self and other, between the one who is resting and the rest itself. A teacher once described the mind in deep rest as being like the surface of a mountain lake in the hour before dawn. Not frozen, not stagnant, but perfectly still, so still that it has ceased to be merely a surface and has become instead a kind of depth made visible, reflecting the sky above it with such fidelity, such complete and unresisting fidelity, that sky and water seem for a moment to be the same element, the same vast and quietly breathing wholeness, held within the bowl of the mountains without going anywhere, without needing to go anywhere, complete. And the mountains themselves, how quietly they stand, how entirely without effort they occupy their own great weight, rooted in the deep and ancient stillness of the earth, rising without striving, standing without insistence, present through all the weathers and all the seasons with the same unhurried and enormous equanimity, untroubled by the clouds that move across them, untroubled by the snow that softens their lines in winter, or the summer light that warms their stone faces in the long and drowsy afternoons. Simply there, simply and profoundly there, the way the deepest part of the self is simply there, beneath all the weather of thought and feeling and memory, beneath all the seasons of the life, simply, quietly, enormously there. You do not have to become the mountain. You do not have to achieve its stillness through any effort of will or practice or concentration. The stillness is already present. It has been present all along, beneath everything, patient as stone, quiet as the deep interior of the earth where no sound from the surface ever penetrates, where there is no day and no night, only a constant and enormous and completely undisturbed dark warmth. That is not a place far from you. That is not something the teachings are asking you to travel toward. That is something you are already, most fundamentally, made of. The breath moves, and somewhere below the breath, something does not move. The thoughts drift, and somewhere beneath the thoughts, something is not drifting. The body grows heavier and warmer and more deeply settled, and somewhere within that settling, something has always been settled, has never been otherwise, has known from the very beginning, without words and without the need for words, that this warmth and this dark and this quiet were not things to be sought, but things to be rested in, returned to, like a long and wandering river, returning to the sea it came from, not ending, but arriving, not disappearing, but becoming again what it has always most deeply been. The sea. Let the mind rest on that word for a moment, not as something to picture vividly or examine closely, but as a sound, a soft and resonant sound, the way it might arrive in a half-dream, the way all words arrive in the place between waking and sleeping, strange and gentle, and somehow more themselves than they ever are in ordinary daylight. Sea, the long, slow, utterly unhurried movement of deep water. The way the surface of a great ocean, seen from a great distance, seems not to move at all, seems instead to breathe, slowly and enormously, and with a kind of majestic indifference to time, each swell forming and passing with the same unhurried inevitability, the same slow grace, the same gentle and continuous, and utterly tireless rhythm, as natural as breathing, as ancient as the stone beneath the water, as quiet as the very bottom of things. The bottom of things is very quiet. The tradition knows this and says so, softly, in many ways, across many centuries, in many languages, all of them pointing at the same wordless place. The bottom of things is not cold, or bleak, or empty. It is simply the place where all movement finally rests. It is the ground of rest itself, and it is made, the teaching says, not of nothingness, but of a kind of warm and alive and perfectly content transparency, a clarity so complete and so gentle that it does not assert itself, does not announce itself, does not demand to be seen, only offers itself, endlessly and without condition, the way the earth offers itself beneath everything that grows and moves and lives upon its surface, present always, patient always, requiring nothing, sustaining everything, sustaining even this, sustaining this breath, this warmth, this heaviness, this slow and beautiful dissolution of the day's last edges, sustaining the particular quality of the dark behind the closed eyes, which is not empty dark but gently inhabited dark, filled with its own soft and nameless light, the light that the tradition has called by many names across the centuries, the innate luminosity, the natural radiance, the light that illuminates all things without itself being a thing, the awareness that is aware of everything without being separate from anything it is aware of. This is what the teachings have been circling, gently and without insistence, across all the long centuries of their quiet wisdom. Not a doctrine, not a set of rules, not a discipline to be mastered through years of struggle, but something much simpler and much closer, something that can only be approached by growing quieter, by releasing, by allowing the effortful and the striving and the knowing to settle, the way sediment settles in still water, slowly and without drama, until the water is clear again, clear in the way it has always been beneath the movement, clear with the clarity that is its own natural and unfabricated state. Your own natural and unfabricated state. This is what the rest is revealing, very slowly and very gently, in the dark of this room, in the quiet of this hour, in the warmth of this accumulated stillness. Not something new, not something achieved, something remembered perhaps, in the wordless way that the body remembers warmth after cold, the way the breath remembers its own rhythm after it has been held, the way sleep remembers the sleeper, when the sleeper at last grows still enough to be found, to be gathered in, to be carried gently and completely into the soft and borderless country that lies just beyond the last coherent thought, just past the last soft syllable of the day's long inner conversation, in the wide and luminous and utterly welcoming dark, where the distinction between resting and awareness dissolves as naturally and as completely as morning mist dissolves into the risen sun. Not lost, not gone, but changed into something larger and more free, something that needs no name, something that the deepest part of you has always known, something that has always been waiting, patiently and without the smallest trace of urgency, in the warm and quiet center of everything you are. And the center is very near now. It has always been very near, nearer than thought, nearer than feeling, nearer than the soft sound of the breath moving through the body in the dark. Nearer than near, the teachings say, with a kind of gentle smile, as if nearness itself is still too great a distance, as if the word near still implies a space to cross, a distance to diminish, when in truth, there is no distance at all, has never been any distance at all, only the appearance of distance, only the habit of seeking, the beautiful and human and entirely understandable habit of looking outward for something that has never been anywhere but here, that has never been anything but this warmth, this dark, this breath, this slow and almost imperceptible softening of the boundary between the one who listens and the listening itself. The listening has grown very soft now, very wide. It is no longer listening for anything in particular. It is simply open, the way a room is open to the sounds that move through it, without choosing among them, without preferring one to another, the distant sound of the night settling, the small and barely there sound of the body breathing, the sound of the words growing quieter, slower, more like the memory of words than words themselves, more like the feeling of having been carried gently somewhere warm than like a voice, more like the last traces of a dream already beginning to dissolve at the edges, softly, without effort, without loss, the thoughts growing pale and transparent, as breath in cold air, rising once, and then gone. Gone without going anywhere, absorbed into the surrounding quiet the way a single note played softly on a distant instrument is absorbed into the silence of a winter night. Not silenced, not ended, simply returned to the vast and patient quiet from which all sounds arise, and to which all sounds, sooner or later, with great gentleness and without exception, return. And the quiet receives everything. It has always received everything. It is receiving this now, these last slow words, these last soft images, the warmth, the weight, the beautiful and irresistible heaviness that is gathering now behind the eyes, and in the limbs, and in the slow center of the breath, gathering not as something foreign or imposed, but as something deeply, deeply native, something the body has been moving toward through all the long hours of the day, without knowing it, the way a river moves toward the sea, without knowing the sea, simply following the quiet pull of its own deepest nature, downward always, downward and slower and more still, finding its way through the soft and darkened landscape, toward the place where all movement ends and all rest begins, and the distinction between them no longer seems to mean anything at all, no longer seems to correspond to anything real, because here, in this depth, in this warmth, in this final and most gentle dissolving, movement and rest are the same, waking and sleeping are the same, knowing and not knowing are the same, and the self that has carried the question of its own nature through so many long and wearying days finally sets that question down, sets it down as a traveler sets down a stone that has been carried too long and too far, sets it down not with relief exactly, because relief requires a self to feel it, but with something quieter than relief, something without a name in the language of the surface, something the body knows before the mind can speak of it, something like the moment when the last light goes out in a room that was already mostly dark, and the dark simply becomes complete, becomes itself, becomes the warm and breathing and welcoming dark that has no opposite, no edge, no morning waiting on the other side of it to make it temporary or small, simply the dark as it has always been, when the eye of the mind stops moving across it, looking for shapes and features and familiar things, and simply rests, simply opens, simply becomes the seeing, without the need for anything to be seen, the knowing, without the need for anything to be known, and in the oldest of the teachings this is given a name, a very quiet name, a name that means something close to the ground of being, or the original face, or the nature that was there before the first thought arose, and will be there when the last thought has softly settled. But the name is only a finger pointing toward the moon, as one of the most beloved of all the old sayings gently reminds us. And tonight, there is no need to look at the finger, no need to follow the pointing toward anything at all, because the moon is already here, already shining, already luminous and full above the quiet landscape of the breath, above the warm and still terrain of the body, lying heavy and at peace in the dark. And all that was ever needed was this cessation of the search, this beautiful and restful ceasing of the movement outward. And the way it happens is never dramatic, never a great arrival or a sudden opening. It is always this gentle, always this slow, always this much like something that was happening anyway, and only now is noticed. The way you might notice, somewhere in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, that the rain has stopped. Not the moment it stopped, not the last drop, but the quiet afterward, the dripping from the eaves growing slower and more intermittent, the particular stillness that follows rain, and the noticing itself is part of the stillness, the awareness of the quiet, folded so gently into the quiet that the two cannot be separated, cannot be told apart, and this is what the teachings have always been pointing toward, not an achievement, not an attainment, not something grasped or won or arrived at through effort, but a recognition, a homecoming, a return to something so close it could not be seen when the eyes were searching, the way you cannot see the eye that sees, the way the ear cannot hear itself hearing, the way the warmth at the center of the body simply is the warmth, and does not need to understand its own warmth in order to be it, in order to offer it, in order to fill the whole still space of this moment with it. And warmth is a good word for it, perhaps the softest and most accurate word the language of the surface has to offer, because what the oldest teachings describe as the natural condition of awareness, stripped of everything added, freed from every layer of commentary and preference and grasping, what remains is not cold or distant or abstract. It is not the gray and formless void that the thinking mind sometimes imagines when it tries to conceive of emptiness. It is warm. It has always been warm. Warmth is perhaps its most essential quality, the quality that the heart recognizes before the mind can speak. And this is why, in so many of the old traditions, the beginning of wisdom is spoken of in the same breath as compassion, not as two separate things, not as a teaching and its application, but as a single arising, the way light and warmth arise together from a flame, and cannot be separated into the light part and the warm part. They are one event, one gentle and continuous offering to the surrounding dark, and the heart lying still now in the quiet body, in the warm bed in the dark room, is itself that flame, small and steady and endlessly itself, burning without consuming anything, offering without depleting anything, resting in its own warmth, the way a coal rests in the soft gray bed of its own ash, still glowing, still warm, needing nothing from the surrounding night, simply being what it has always been, simply continuing in the most peaceful and natural and uncontrived way possible. The word uncontrived is another word the old teachings lean on with great tenderness and frequency, and it is such a restful word when you feel it rather than think it. Uncontrived, not made, not constructed, not held in place by effort or intention, not dependent on conditions being right, not vulnerable to conditions shifting, simply there, the way water is simply wet and the sky is simply open. And this is what makes the invitation to rest so different from an instruction to perform rest. Because rest that is performed is not rest at all. It is only another activity wearing the clothes of stillness. And the teachings have always known this, have always gently pointed away from the effortful and toward the effortless, toward the rest that happens when the doing softly stops. Not because the doing is stopped by another doing, but because the space between the doings gradually widens and widens, and the doings grow fewer and lighter and more transparent until there is mostly space, and the space is so large and so warm and so accepting of everything that the last few doings simply dissolve into it, the way the last few stars dissolve into the brightening sky at dawn, not extinguished but absorbed, return to the light from which they were always only a temporary brightening, and the sky that receives them is unchanged by their going, as wide as ever, as blue and as open as ever, and the body in the bed is that sky, is that wideness, is that open and unchanging and utterly patient blue, and the thoughts that have been moving across it all the long day are dissolving now, one by one, so gently, so completely, leaving no trace, no residue, only the blue, only the open, only the warm and borderless and endlessly patient sky of awareness resting in itself. There is a particular image that arises sometimes in the old texts, an image of a lamp carried into a vast and dark room, and how the darkness does not resist the lamp, does not flee from it or fight it, but simply receives the light the way the darkness of a room receives the light of a single candle, openly and without reservation, and when the lamp is carried out again, the darkness returns. Again without resistance, without drama, without the need to reassert itself, simply filling the space the light has left, the way water fills a hollow in the earth, quietly and completely and without effort. And the teaching buried in this image, the teaching carried in it like a sleeping seed, is that darkness and light are not enemies, are not opposites struggling against each other across the long battlefield of time, but are more like two expressions of the same patient and unchanging openness, the openness that holds the light when light is present, and holds the dark when dark is present, and is itself neither light nor dark, but something prior to both, something that the thinking mind can gesture toward, but never quite contain, something the resting mind, the mind that is resting now, the mind that has grown quiet enough to stop its gesturing, simply and effortlessly is, simply inhabits, without knowing it inhabits it, the way the body inhabits its own warmth without knowing warmth, the way the breath inhabits its own rhythm without knowing rhythm, simply moving, simply being, simply continuing in the most natural and unforced and deeply native way. And native is perhaps the word to rest in for a moment, if resting in a word is something the mind can still do. and it may be that the mind is now too soft and too close to sleep to rest in anything so definite as a word, which is perfectly right, which is exactly as it should be, because the teachings do not require wakefulness, do not require attention of the kind that tracks and follows and remembers. They only require this gentle openness, this soft availability, this willingness to let the understanding arrive, not as a thought, but as a warmth, the way understanding sometimes arrives in the middle of the night, long after the thinking about something has ceased, arriving not with the bright sharpness of an idea, but with the soft settling of a truth that has finally found enough quiet around it to be felt. And native is a word like that, a word that points toward belonging, toward the sense of having arrived somewhere, that was always home, always the right place, always the place the deepest part of you was moving toward, through all the wandering. And the Buddhist teaching of our true nature, of what in the old language is sometimes called Buddha nature, is precisely this: the recognition that the ground you are standing on has always been home ground, that the awareness you are resting in has always been the ground of your experience, not something acquired, not something cultivated, not something borrowed from a teaching or a teacher, though the teachings and the teachers may have helped clear away some of the underbrush of misunderstanding, may have helped open the path a little. The thing at the end of the path was never elsewhere, was never waiting in some distant country of spiritual achievement, was simply here, simply this, simply the warmth and the dark and the soft sound of breathing, and the body growing heavy, and the mind growing light, growing lighter and lighter, in the way that something grows lighter when it is let go, when it is set down, when the hands open, and the holding simply ceases, and what was held floats free, the way a feather floats free, when the hand that was cupping it finally opens on a still and quiet evening, and the feather simply rises, slowly, and without urgency, into the soft and welcoming air. There is so much air tonight, so much soft and breathing air, and the body is floating in it, floating and sinking at the same time, which is the particular quality of the deepest rest, the way the body feels both weightless and perfectly, completely heavy, both present and already at the threshold of somewhere else. And this threshold is not a door, not a passageway to cross with effort. It is more like the place where the shallow water meets the deep water in a still lake, and you are drifting across it, without paddling, without willing yourself across, simply moving with the slow current of the breath, the exhale that carries you gently outward, and the inhale that is growing slower now, and lighter now, and the exhale again, that opens a little more space, releases a little more of the day's accumulated weight, and the weight is very willingly released. It does not cling. It has never really wanted to cling. It has only been carried because the carrying was habitual, and the habits are very old and very deep, but they are loosening now. They are softening the way everything softens in warmth. And the warmth is here. It has always been here, in the chest, in the slow center of the breathing, in the particular quality of the darkness behind the closed eyes, that is not empty or cold, but filled with a soft and shapeless luminosity, a warmth that is also a kind of light, too diffuse and too quiet to illuminate anything in particular. Simply there, the way the warmth of a room is simply there after the fire has been burning for a long time, soaked into the walls and the ceiling and the floor, held in the grain of the wood and the weave of the cloth, the whole room breathing warmth the way a living thing breathes, gently and continuously, and without awareness of its own generosity. And generosity is another quality that the old teachings return to again and again, not as a virtue to be practiced, not as a thing to be added to the self through effort and repetition, but as a quality of the open heart, the heart that has grown still enough to feel its own depth. And what the stillness reveals at the heart's depth is not a self-contained or defended thing, but something porous and warm and endlessly available, the way deep water is always available to receive what falls into it, always available to hold what is entrusted to it, always returning to its own level and its own calm after whatever disturbance has moved across its surface. And the surface is very still now, very smooth, barely any movement across it at all, only the faintest rising and falling that corresponds to the breath, the long, slow, almost invisible breathing of a body that is very nearly asleep, that is moving so gently now, along the border between waking and sleeping, that the border itself is dissolving, is becoming as soft and indistinct as the border between the water and the air, on a perfectly still evening, when the reflection in the water is so clear and so complete that for a moment you cannot tell which is the sky and which is the sky's image in the deep and quiet water below, and the answer to that question does not matter tonight. The answer to that question can dissolve along with everything else, along with the last faint traces of effort, the last small remnants of the day's long conversation with itself, dissolving into the soft and patient dark the way salt dissolves into warm water, completely and without remainder, becoming part of something larger than itself, something quieter and more still. The teachings speak sometimes of the in-between, of the state that lies between sleeping and waking as a place of particular softness and particular openness, a place where the usual categories grow loose, and the usual boundaries between self and world, between inside and outside, between the one who experiences and the experiencing itself, grow permeable and thin and finally transparent. And this is where you are now, in this soft in-between, in this luminous and borderless country that the waking mind cannot visit and the sleeping mind has already left behind, a country that exists only in the crossing, only in the gentle passage from one to the other, and it is perhaps the most natural and most peaceful country there is, requiring nothing, offering everything, asking only that you continue to move through it at the pace of the breath, which is very slow now, very slow and very deep, moving like the tide in a sheltered bay, where the water is always calm, and the tide moves without hurry, without drama, simply in and simply out, the most ancient and patient rhythm in the world, the rhythm the body knew before the first thought, the rhythm it will know long after the last. Thought has finished its soft unraveling into the surrounding quiet, the rhythm that is underneath all the other rhythms, the ground note that holds all the other notes, the way the deep earth holds the roots of the oldest trees, quietly and completely and without any awareness of its own holding, simply offering itself, simply being the ground, simply continuing in the most natural and uncontrived and endlessly patient way. And the patience is very deep tonight, is very near, is moving through the body the way the warmth moves through a stone that has been lying in the sun all the long soft afternoon, soaked all the way through with a warmth that will last the whole night long, that will still be there, in the very center of the stone, long after the surface has grown cool, long after the stars have come out above the darkened field, and the field has grown still, and the night has settled into its own deep and breathing quiet. The field is quiet. The night is quiet. The body is quiet, settled into the warmth of the bed, the way the stone is settled into the warmth of the field, fully supported, fully held, every small and habitual tension released now into the softness beneath. And there is so much softness beneath. There has always been so much softness beneath. The softness that the body rests on, and the softness that the mind rests in, are finally indistinguishable, are finally one softness, one warmth, one open and welcoming and utterly patient dark, and the dark is breathing, very slowly, very softly, in and out, and you are the breathing, and the breathing is you, and the distinction between the two is growing very thin now, very thin and very fine, like the last thread of smoke rising from a candle that has just been gently blown out, rising and dispersing, and becoming part of the same air that surrounds it, the same air that fills the quiet room, the same air that moves so slowly through the body, in and out, carrying with it a warmth that belongs to no particular place and no particular moment, but simply to the night itself, to the long and patient night that holds everything so gently, that asks nothing, that simply continues its soft and ancient work of letting the world rest,